want to speak a little bit about the spiritual conscious life experience and some of what I've recognized along the way over the years. There was a period of time, particularly in my own phase one experience and for many years afterwards, that there was a lot of emphasis on the psychic, on the ethereal, on the multi-dimensional aspect of experience, spirit body, energy, chakras, you know. So very much the psychic experience, I would say. Huge emphasis on that. Particularly when, well, since the awakening experience in 2001, and then further deepened into in around about 2007 when I started studying with my old teacher, and for about 5 to 10 years after that as well, we went really deep into the psychic, into the etheric realms, the multidimensional nature of experience, like really deep, you know. And my old teacher taught us like a lot, and didn't just teach us theoretically. He showed us how to access these other realms, how to navigate them, how to interpret them in relation to our experience, how to navigate the dark, the negative, how so many things, man, like so many things, that teachings and experiences that you don't find anywhere else. You know, that was a real strength and uniqueness about him. He was an absolute master expert of the multi-dimensional realms of experience, and he passed the experience to us all. He showed us directly. He didn't hold anything back. Well, not much. But some of the things that he held back, I knew he was holding them back, and I kind of sussed out what they were. But that's another story. So yeah, the psychic, ethereal dimensions, huge for the first 3/4 of my spiritual experience. So spiritual, you know, so spirit, that's very much related to psychic, very much related to the ethereal, you know, spiritual dimensions. These days I don't consider the experience spiritual. I don't consider myself spiritual, of course not. And things have shifted, you know. So I communicate this here for just to provide some, you know, some thoughts, some reflections, you know, some things to consider in your own experience. So for 3/4 of my experience so far, there's been a lot of emphasis on the psychic, on the ethereal, you know, on multidimensional nature of experience, how it correlates to one's own etheric body, and chakra systems, and crowns, and roots, and hearts, and things, you know. And all well and good. A lot was learned. A lot was enabled to be healed and transformed through in the multidimensional spiritual experience. When working with my old teacher, there's an emphasis on the light and on the dark. Emphasis on dark dimensions, negative entities, and their influences upon us, and how to resolve ourselves from the influence of these things. Also on the light side, there was celestial, which others would call like the angelic, light beings, higher beings, so there was that duality. There was that, the light and the dark. Good, perfect, obviously the definition of that helped us to understand what we were dealing with, helped us to speak to one another and communicate and recognize things. And going into phase 2, there was a recognition of in this experience, is unconscious, unresolved shadow, unresolved darkness. And I came to recognize the influence of dark demonic beings, negative entities in relation to the unresolved shadow. So I went deeply into the experience of that. Communicated here about going into the subconscious mind and purifying it, clearing it out, acknowledging it, and being aware of it, and eventually resolving it and healing ourselves. So, the simple idea was we heal and resolve our dark, we navigate, kill and obliterate the negative entities, demonic beings, and we buddy up with the light beings, with the celestial, with the angelic beings, and we become as them in our energy and in our consciousness. Very simplistic view, but it showed us what we needed to work on and what we needed and what for us to yearn to attain. Resolve from the dark, yearn for the light, and attain and embody the light. So the dynamic is suitable, necessary particularly for the phase 2 process. Because you're purifying your energy system, purifying your subconscious mind, all the different layers of your being, purifying your energy system. You're resolving your physical body and physiology and its particularly its interface with the energy system, with the chakra points, and so on. And so that purification process continues. We resolve more and more into the light, Simply speaking, but it's true. It's clearly true. So, where shall I go with this? Where there is an unresolved shadow, there is the influence of demonic entities. Absolutely. 100%. In my experience, I became more and more sensitively aware to the energetic, to the ethereal, to the multidimensional, and I became more and more perceptively aware of these beings and of these influences and how they operate in the internal world dimensions, and also how they operate in their interaction, their negative influence and interaction with humanity. I became more acutely aware of that through the trainings from my old teacher specifically. Now, before I began the trainings with my old teacher, I could see psychic realms and multidimensional realms. I would see UFOs often. I would see all sorts of different phenomena at home or anywhere where I was. I would see ghosts, I would see beings, I would see light beings, I would see aliens, I would see grey aliens, I would see reptilians, not only just see them, but I would experience them. And I would actually fight them, the dark, the demonic beings. Now, one time, and I told this to a member who's no longer a member, who decided to kick himself out before I kicked him out. I was just telling him the other week. He's in Vietnam, so I was visiting him the other week. And he asked me about this experience because I mentioned it before in one of the workshops that he attended way back. And it was my run-in with a grey alien. My first run-in with a grey alien. So I was studying with my old teacher. It was during that period. And one time, living in Glasgow, Scotland, I was asleep. And as I was waking up from sleep, I saw in front of me a grey in my bedroom. In my bedroom, grey alien, bug-eyed grey alien. And I saw it and I went, oh, and I was startled by it. I was scared about it. I feared it, you know, but my initial inclination was to power against it aggressively, you know, being the Glaswegian, being the aggressive Scotsman, particularly in my younger unresolved years, a lot of aggression, a lot of anger. I lunged towards it basically to kick its head in, and that's the only thing I knew how to resolve situations back then, through violence and aggression, you know. So anyway, that's like, whoa, I lunged towards it. I was scared of it, you know. What else could I do? I just had to go and beat it up, you know. So it dissolved, it went. And so I had that imprint and that experience of meeting my first grey alien. And then I would see them, then they would turn up everywhere. You know, I'd see them many, many times. There was one time in my bedroom again, and my little daughter, she was just born. She was in her little cot beside her bed at the time. And in the middle of the night, I woke up. I heard her kind of, she had woken up, you know, and she was making noises. And when I woke up, I recognized that there was 3 grey aliens beside her cot. So there was a period of time where these greys were really, really showing up in my home. You know, they were causing me a lot of anxiety, you know, and fear. You know, so again, it was just like lunging towards these things, particularly if they're beside my baby daughter, you know, to destroy them physically, you know, aggressively. But with these grey aliens and with all of these entities, they exist not in the physical, they exist in the ethereal, but there's an overlap with the physical. You know, so when people see ghosts and spirits and things like that, there's a dimensional overlap that allows people, you know, that enables people to see. You know, people will see these ghosts and things. There's a dimensional overlap of some of these ethereal dimensions that are quite close to ours, you know, and that we directly exist within as well, within our etheric being. So my unresolved etheric being, energy body, spirit body, was in the same dimension as these grey aliens, was in the same dimension, resonant frequency, vibrational blah blah blah, as these grey aliens. So that was the experience that was happening. I had all sorts of different experiences with demonic entities, reptilian entities, all sorts of dark, weird, obscure, disgusting blobs and dark beings. And so there was a period of time where I was like wandering through the dark caves of hell, particularly during my phase 2. So a lot of the phase 2 work in my experience, most of the phase 2 work in my experience was actually done in the ethereal realms, in the etheric realms. Most of the resolution work was done in the energetic, in the internal ethereal realms, and some of it in the physical conscious realms. But all of the layers of being are relevant, you know. We're resolving and purifying each of them. But particularly working with my old teacher, that's where his context of of spiritual conscious life experience was mostly within these multi-dimensional realms of experience. And then we joined them there. You know, we were all in there, you know. And for several years in studying with him, I was more in tune, I was more within those dimensions than I was out here in the physical dimension, if you like. I was mostly within those dimensions. So I would be in this physical dimension, but I would easily see the overlay of the ethereal dimensions. People, I'd see all their entity attachments. I would see their damaged aura or their energy system. I would see all of these things. You know, well, most of us could that trained with our old teacher. He just taught us how to. He taught us how to, basically, you know, and so that became our experience. and so that allowed us to see the grotesque, dark, grotesque, demonic nature of the human shadow, of our own shadow, manifest in spiritual, ethereal form. So it was a real eye-opener, you know, when you actually come to recognize what you are in allegiance with. And I've spoken in some of my videos about, oh man, you're part of Devil's Army and you don't even know it and things. This is what I'm referring to, you know. So we are unresolved, the shadow is unresolved, and we have still got certain things to work out, like where we compromise ourselves. You know, where compromise is where Satan is where we are being influenced similarly by the dark, negative entities. You know, where we compromise ourselves, we lend ourselves into the dark, and we open ourselves to all sorts of influences, you know, particular influences that are most notable to be aware of, well, to resolve or to at least have a conceptual understanding. If you don't have the the vision, if you don't experience the visionary aspect of what I'm talking about, it's completely fine and it's completely okay. You don't need to. If you don't, do not distract yourself. So long as you've got a sense of what needs to be resolved, you know, perhaps you acknowledge the subconscious impulses and things that are arising within your mind. That's all. I would say that's all you need. I would say that is what you ought to stick with and resolve these, you know, because when you go into the world, when you enter the experiences of phenomena and psychic phenomena, there's a lot of distraction there as well. You know, a lot of time waste, I would even say, when it just comes to the direct resolution of one's being and purification of the shadow. Kind of yes and no, but it's not really important that you have all of this perception, things like that. In my experience now, I don't bother about psychic, etheric, and ethereal. But that's for another reason, which is the point of this video that I'm going to explain, which I'll get to eventually. So the thing that most notably affects us is demonic entity attachment. So with an unresolved shadow, we have a toxic energy system, a toxic energy body. You know, a wounded physiology, damaged physioenergetic system. And this damage and as well as the behavioral compromises and things that I spoke about, enables the influence of demonic beings. Generally, within the internal world experience, they fire different impulses and thought suggestions into your mind. They, like, you take as being you, but they're not. They're coming from these other beings, right? But also, these damaged areas of our physio-energetic system are basically openings for demonic beings, entity attachments, to attach to us. I'll give an example that just came to mind at the moment. I used to do some charity work, door-to-door charity work, when I was first entering into my phase 3 reconnection phase. I was really given the opportunity through the circumstance of life to make that reconnection phase. So I was coming out of phase 2, coming into phase 3, which I didn't realize at the time. It's only afterwards I'm able to have a more of a objective view on it and go, right, and see how things fit together. But that was what was happening for me. Coming out of the phase 2 intensity, still healing. Coming out of the phase 2 intensity, I still had a few years of focused healing resolution going on. So it's not you do phase 2 for a bit, you do a period of intense healing for a year, and you're like, I feel better, that's me now. Good luck with that. So coming out of my phase 2 intensity, most of my phase 2 I did where I was located in the Highlands of Scotland. It's good, in the midst of pristine, beautiful nature. So that was really helpful and beneficial for my experience then. Anyway, there came a day, there's so much information here. There came a day, right? I mean, I was blood, sweat, and tears every day, resolving deep in the shadow, resolving all of my behavioral hostilities and past trauma wounding and all the friggin' dysfunction within me. It was tiring, it was long, it was challenging, it was difficult, it was wearisome, but it was the nature of the game, you know, that I was full on into. But it's like, whoa, so many of these years, all of those years, about 5 years, was like years and 5 years of solitude, living the monk's life, basically, you know, 5 years of solitude for that intense period. And then there was one day I was having a bath, man, I remember, and in my mind I heard very clearly, like somebody speaking to me. In my mind, in my thought perceptions, was just this whole experience of shadow healing and resolving and everything that I'm working on, I've been working on. So I was just kind of in the middle of the overall thought consideration about that, and then I heard in my mind very clearly, very clear voice, pristine voice. What exactly did it say? I can't remember the exact words, but it says, "Oh, yeah, you can live now." So I heard that clearly, and it was resonant in my soul as well, and in my mind. You can live now, you know. Basically, the phase 2 intensity was over. You know, phase 2 wasn't over, but this phase 2 intensity, which for me was about five years, was over. You know, and that was affirming for me. It was like, man, wow, okay, recognizing that, and it was affirming. And around about that time, things shifted in my life experience, and life took me out of the Highlands of Scotland, moved me from the Highlands of Scotland back into the city of Glasgow again, where I would never have gone through my own choice willingness. I couldn't do it. I couldn't spend any time, virtually any time in the city. If I came to the city, it was like, I have to hold my breath, my energetic containment as I went into the city. You know, if I went in for a particular purpose, there's like, brace yourself, and back out again, because of the diverse negative influence within the cities. So when you become perceptively clear and sensitive of these alternate dimensions of experience, you see a lot, you know? And for me, during that period, going through the city was like, it was just walking through hell. You just see all these gnarly creatures and the human beings, all their entity attachments and the negative impulses and the sexual distortions, firing from guys across the women over the other side of the street and vice versa, and seeing all these so many things, so much phenomena, dark phenomena, you know. And when I went into the cities, I was always affected. I was weakened by it. I had to try and remain strong and clear and hold my nose for the duration that I was there, and then to come back out again, you know. But I was always somewhat weakened by it. So, life circumstantially was taking me back to the city again. I'm like, oh my goodness, all right? And this was entering into my phase 3 experience, which I recognize now, the rebalancing. When I went back in to the city and I rented an apartment and I got a job and got myself just like set up a little bit, you know, just take care of my necessary living. When I went back in to the city, the unconsciousness from the city affected me such that it like overtook me, you know. So I went into the unconsciousness of myself, of the city dimensions experience, and I was like underwater, affected by it. You know, I wasn't clear. If it was back in the Highlands, I resolve out of that density, out of that darkness, and I would be clear, I would be pristine, I would be crown connected, I would be open, heart connected, heart expanded, fine. But back in city, and you know, I was like submerged in the unconsciousness, in the dark there, and I knew it, but I recognized what was happening. I was coming back into the dark, but I had the awareness of it, the consciousness of it. So whilst I was submerged in the dark, I was aware of it. I was aware of it. You know, my crown was closed over significantly. I was like really affected, like swimming in the darkness. I knew, I recognized it. And I recognize the experience of I am here, truly affected by this dark here, but I have the awareness to recognize it. But actually mustering up and gaining the strength to overcome it was another story. But that was what was necessary. I needed to have the strength to overcome it, you know, and to resolve out of it from within it. Whilst I had these like pinpoint sensitivities to the energetic. Back in the Highlands, I didn't need the strength, and I was leading a life of solitude. I was clear, I was light, even though I was still working on stuff. You know, I didn't need that. So the dynamics were different in the city, and I recognized I need the strength. I need to gain the strength to you know, to like expand in my consciousness and to remain steadfast and consolidated in consciousness, in my energy, in order to withstand the dark influence. So that's what was going on. There was this struggle going on for a few months, I would say, and this intensity of struggle. And I speak about phase 3 being like the reconnection, rebalancing phase. So this will give you a little bit of an idea of what I mean. So this intensity of struggle would happen. I had this job. I got this job very rudimentary, unskilled, well, it did take skills, but a basic job where I would go door to door charity work, and I would get people to sign up for different charities, cancer charities, Save the Children charities, Heart Foundation charities, etc. Now, the thing about that job was, coincidentally, I'd need to go door to door to door to door. I would be relating with hundreds of human beings every day, hundreds of people every day, coming from 5 years of solitude, living in a different dimensional experiences from everybody else, to coming into the city, being submerged in the dark influence of the city, and then in this job having to speak to hundreds of people every day, with this absolute sensitivity in my being. So you could imagine I would go into these like really decrepit, a butterfly, beautiful butterfly, wow. These really decrepit and run-down scheme areas, housing scheme areas, lots of poor people, lived, all the people on benefits, like 15 kids and things like that. You get the idea. So I was like trudging through the energy of all of this like societal dysfunction, going door to door and pitching my spiel. But that job was really putting me into a burning process of being able to be strong enough to speak and relate with people. Again, not from a woo-woo spiritual perspective, which I was used to for the past, but to come back in and back down into normal communication and relationship with people, So I was really burning through the intensity of stepping up to that. And I had to step up confidently and assured so that the people trusted me enough to sign up for the charities, and I would get my little bonus and make money, for my part of the equation. So that was going on. So much intense, like constant energy healing and purification, and like entities jumping about here, there, and everywhere, and all sorts of gnarly beings, demonic situations going from door to door. It was really intense, So it was really in the furnace of that, burning through and into, a balance, basically becoming stronger within my own being to be able to be in face of the dark, in face of the demonic, without being influenced or affected by it, unflinching to it, whilst also remaining clear and protected, naturally clear and protected. There was a period of time when I was going through this sensitive experience where, oh my goodness, I would douse myself in lavender oil. I would have like all of these I had a crystal belt. I had those like black tourmaline crystals, protective crystals. I had a belt that had lots of these huge, big, thick crystals in them, stones in them. And I wore this belt every day around the area of my waist, because the area in my waist was a susceptible opening for demonic entities to jump in and to attach. And when they jumped in and when they attached, really pull my energy down, and it'd be a real internal fight to get that and extricate the entities that got in there, So I had all the tools, basically, for war, all the tools of war, psychic war, So that was necessary for the phase previously, and partially in this phase as well. But what had to happen is that I had to become that strength myself without the dependency on the tools of the bells, on the crystals and all of these things. I had to become that strength within. I had to become my own crystal, my own diamond, indestructible, so to speak, right? But I just had to become strong enough, steady enough, grounded enough, so as to be able to operate within the world within these dark spaces without being affected by them. So that is very much an experience of phase 3. There's a rebalancing, and that rebalancing also encourages coming down off any previous spiritual pedestal, becoming stronger inner sensitivities, so that we're not so much affected. You think of people that are empathic with people's negative vibes. They make me go, These days, I could go face to face in communication with a hall full of narcissists, spiteful, narcissistic, manipulative, controlling people, and I would have great fun with them all and not be affected by it. So really that has been, over the course of the years, the energy body has, and the physio-energetic body has healed, and these gaps and these wounds that were infiltrated by negative beings, negative energy, they've been resolved, over time. They've closed up and they've healed, and so there's a strength and there's a consolidation in the energy now. So during that period of phase 3, that was what was happening. Regaining my strength, and becoming steady, and allowing the energy body and physio-energetic system to heal and to resolve itself, and to allow me to be able to function within the world, society, anywhere, no matter how dark. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter, I got to the point where it could be anywhere. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. My energy body, my physio-energetic system is healed. It's resolved. I don't have the same separative judgment, fear, or concern about dark or negativity. I'm clearly aware of it. It's not denied or avoided. It's just it. I'm grounded. I'm strong. I'm consolidated. I'm clear. I'm light, and that's through all of the years of work that I've done. Anyway, so one example, going back to what I was speaking about initially, one example of entity attachment that was quite considerable and really threw me aback when I was in this person's house for the charity sign-up thing. And this woman was signing up for whatever particular charity it was at the time. And I was in her living room. And she gave me a little heads up. She says her young daughter, who's about 4 years old, you might see her, you might think she's a bit strange. She's got ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if I got that right. ADHD. I'm like, okay, all right. And so the little girl came in. And so she came into my left. I was sitting on the sofa, and she came in. I just saw her. And as you turned to see her, this little 4-year-old girl, but there was like a 35, where there was like a 6'2", 35-year-old male spirit attached to her. Huge, big thing. This little 4-year-old had this attachment, huge, big. I'm like, oh, okay, seeing this, and noticing the little girl's nervous system was affected by it, That's how she was all jittery. Her nervous system, her energy system, her energy body, and her physical nervous system was overwhelmed by this entity attachment. I'm not sure how aware, if anything, she was of it. The mother obviously wasn't, but it was very clearly apparent, to anyone that could perceive these things. I was like, whoa, I understand why the ADHD, So there's so many conditions, medical conditions out there that are actually the result of entity interference, the demonic influence and things like that. But that's another story. So where was I going with this? So, yeah, there was a period of time where, before I started studying my old teacher, where I had awareness. I could see demonic entities and things like that, spirits, and particularly through my phase one experience of being special and putting myself on a pedestal, psychic powers, telepathy, and all of that kind of stuff. I saw all of these things. I'm like, wow, psychic, perceptive, special, chosen person. But I'll tell you what I saw then, what I could perceive then, compared to what I was eventually able to perceive and recognize through the period of studying my old teacher, was like night and day. I thought I was sensitive and perceptive and aware when I was in phase one. I was seeing all of this phenomena. Some months and some years with my teacher took me to other far deeper levels of perceiving and awareness of these other dimensional realities. So there was a sensitivity during phase one, and then there was like a really very acute sensitivity that was developed, and being able and well, I didn't develop it. It just came upon me. I remember the specific moment that came upon me, where my perceptive awareness of psychic phenomena like became far more, far greater, far more vivid. I was in the country of Wales, and I was in the car park of this hotel where my old teacher was facilitating like a workshop weekend for us all. And just all of a sudden, I've just felt a shift, and I was able to see a lot more phenomena. I was more sensitive to a lot more, just in a split instant. So it just came upon me. I didn't know about it. I didn't work towards it. It just happened. It just went more deep or something. Became more vivid in the experience. But I was shocked, because what I recognized was that I just observed my own being, and I could see, oh my God, I could see within my own being, particularly in the waist area where I was very damaged energetically. I saw this like 8-foot pole lodged in my abdomen. I'm like, oh, this thing lodged in my, and when I saw it, I felt, and I recognized that I had that feeling all of the time, but I didn't recognize what it was associated with. More subtle, that sort of within me. And it was because of this, something had stuck a huge big 8-foot pole into my abdomen, this etheric pole, etheric beam, whatever it was, like tree trunk in my abdomen. No wonder I was affected. Going back to the little girl, how that huge entity had overwhelmed her energy system, things like that. So, I mean, a lot of the damage to our nervous system that we experience, anxiety and things like that, can correlate to different etheric artifacts that are attached to us energetically. But it's not necessary, like I said, that you need to find out, you need to know about this stuff. Just work on what you have knowledge of, and that's enough. And the energy stuff will take care of itself in relation to the work you're doing anyway. So I recognized that, and then I seen that these other like things that stuck in me, these artifacts like knives and sharp objects and things stuck in. I was like somebody coming home from a medieval battlefield, where they've got arrows stuck in them and like a hatchet stuck in them here, and there's blood here. That's what it was like. That's what my energy system was like. It was in the wars. It had like been beaten up, intensely beaten up, and brutalized, And so another layer of cleanup had to was able to occur from the awareness of that. Well, a continuation of it, but there was just more of a recognition of the different layers that were involved. I had to get this pole out of my abdomen. It was like my energy was totally bleeding out, losing, escaping all of this life force energy due to this big freaking tree that was stuck in me, crazy stuff. I mean, so I could speak for hours about all the different things, you know? Anyway, so one of the things by seeing all of this and experiencing all of this in these dark dimensions and things, it brought it really home. The disgustingness, the depravity, the whole demonic nature of it is scary, it's frightening, and you recognize. If you want motivation to heal your shadow, seeing these things will motivate you. What? You know? My God. Seeing the grotesque beings that would jump into my abdomen and some in my heart down here, I would have these like leech things that would attach. You know, it's like, ugh, get them off, you know? There's two things you can do quickly that helps to give you an instant energy clearing. One, take a freezing cold shower. Entities will jump, any entities, maybe not all of them, but some entities that are attached to you will jump off. All right, because you will have this physio-energetic reaction to the cold water, you know, and that will just like shake your being and your energy, and it also kind of gives you a light boost as well, you know, like a vibration raise, your awareness, like you know, instant vibration raise, as well as the sort of subtle shock to the nervous system is enough to shake off many of the entities that might be attached to you. So a good freezing cold shower is good, you know, for that purpose. The other thing as well is the dark park exercise. When you go down deep into the dark park, you know, you go really down into your sensitivity and within your subconscious mind, and that can give you another shake. Is your system another shake, and entities will jump off you as well. So these are things that these are things I learned, and these are things that I used to do. You know, and sometimes it helps to have, if you're like really laden down with negative entity attachments, then it's good to have a bit of reprieve from them, because when they're attached, they're sucking at your energy, they're depleting your energy, plus they're feeding thought impulses to your mind, you know. So it's all sorts of disorientation, subtle and overt disorientation, as well as the energy bleeding and the energy sucking that goes on. And that's not helping when you're trying to like meditate and try to work things out, you know. So being able to like eject and extricate these entities, at least even for a small period of time, an hour or two, will just help you, would give you an opening, you know, to breathe. You know, to apply meditation, to, you know, rethink your experience and take action, you know, on what you need to do, you know. So it provides a little opening. And I would say, like a really cold shower or an ice bath, doing a dark park exercise, hell of a lot cheaper than hiring a healer, you know, definitely. And you don't really want to just go hiring healers that you're not really aware of. They would inject more toxicity into you than they will heal, a lot of them, you know. So, but that's another story. All right, so there was a period of time, 3/4 of my experience within the psychic multidimensional realms of experience, and phase 3, rebalancing and all of this thing. Also, during the phase 3 process, there was a period of plant medicines. Plant medicines occurred in phase 2 as well. At the beginning of phase 2, there was ayahuasca experience that I had in Ecuador, different experiences with ayahuasca. Phase 3, I had experiences with Campbell, with Iboga, with cannabis oil, you know. And these were aids, these were beneficial aids for me. You know, not for everybody. For me, they really were, actually. Particularly Campbell and Iboga. Wow. These were supporting to my experience. Anyway, purification, you know, ultimately. I mean, that's the main purpose. We ought to really go into these plant medicines experiences with. It's not necessarily for the, the Terence McKenna wow factor, you know, but for the healing, resolution, purification, the main thing, you know. That's where our focus ought to be. our focus ought to be not on phenomena. Oh, wow, I can see psychic stuff and this and that, and I have telepathic communication abilities and healing abilities. All of these things I recognized, and these were experiences that I had. But if you're caught up in them and you are associated with being anything that's psychic, master, mystic, magical, shaman, healer, then you're away. You're compromised. You're compromised, and you'll just get carried away into various prolonged dimensions of delusion. And anyway, so so going through the experience, and what happened was I started to resolve out of the psychic dimensions. So I would experience a lot of the celestial beauty and light, also the angelic, and there would be connection with that as well, and that was all fine and good. But it was actually the interaction with the dark that gave me the most information, that gives us the most information about ourselves, and lends more greatly to transformation. So if there's somebody that's not resolved from phase 2, and they're angels and they're guides and they're all going this way, and they ought to turn around and come back into the dark and investigate the dark and go down deep into the dark and take the wounds, fight the battle, navigate through the experience, learn about it, heal yourself, resolve the entity attachments, purify the unconscious mind, and become stronger, in the process of rebalancing. The angels are there, they'll do their thing, they're with you, whatever. You can pray to them, but you've got work to do. You've got work to do. So you can see how people are deluded. So they're all angelic, they're all light, but they've got all these gnarly beings and 10-foot tree trunks stuck within them, and hatchets and attachments around here and attachments here, and web-covered faces and blockages in their heart, and they're messed up big time. But they're like, my guides and my angels, and they're gone, So it's imperative to resolve yourself, So it's imperative to go really massively deeply completely into the phase 2 process. Go down and shake hands with the devil, It's the only way, truly is the only way. Of course it is. It's obvious, isn't it? So, so throughout the experience of the years in this journey of transformation, the psychic phenomena, ethereal, multidimensional experience started to resolve from me. It wasn't as much of a central focal point. It wasn't much became less and less in my existence and central focus. It started to resolve from that. Not that I came back into the physical and forgot about all of that. No, it was just a dream out in my head. That was my imagination. No, something else began to happen. Through the phase 3 reconnection phase, I speak about the integration that happens. So when you're heal and resolve, as you heal and resolve your physio-energetic system, your etheric body, your spirit body, it resolves. That gives you more clear access to the deeper soul. The deeper soul is God, is the oneness of God, So you think about it, if you're tied up in the ethereal realms and you're resolving all your separation and your perceptive waywardness and things like that, there's not enough time for the soul. You've got work to do, and integrating all of these parts and resolving and integrating all of these parts. So as a resolution and integration occurs and the rebalancing and the strengthening occurs, the experience of soul begins to emerge more into your cognition, into your awareness, And so that is what I recognized. I recognized that through my own experience. I wasn't taught about it. Through my own experience, some years after my old teacher passed away, but I know he was recognizing of that too. I recognize now. I know that he was. So anyway, as all of these elements begin to resolve, psychic multidimensional, the psychic multidimensional experience, the different perspective aspects of that just begin to, I would say in this moment, just to dissolve and resolves into the singularity of God, into the singularity of soul. And that is where the experience has taken me over the years. So, and that comes as part of the phase 3 experience of reconnection and integration that becomes a soul realization, soulfulness, wholeness. You're not experiencing a wholeness when you're still unresolved and you're dealing with the light, dark, shadow things, negative entities, UFOs, and all of the different internal psychological programs and disturbances and behavioral hostilities and things like that of phase 2. When all of that begins to resolve, then you become more integrated, and like a wholeness comes to be. Not your idea of wholeness. I feel whole, and that forget about ideas of wholeness. I would say just like always just go with the experience of how you feel, not the idea of how you think you are or should be. Go with the actual. How does it truly feel? And be honest. Be honest with the experience until you've got to. It's necessary. Or else it's delusion. And it is delusion and delay. It is delay, You're just waiting for the karmic correction to happen in the circumstance of life that makes you face your delusion and the lies, compromise that you're telling yourself. So, honesty is the best policy, and to be from your own direct experience, And each of our experiences can be interpreted and communicated differently. So I'm simply just communicating mine as a reflective, consideration, for anyone that's watching. So anyway, that more and more came to be in the phase 3 experience for me. The rebalancing, the integration, and the wholeness, the experience of wholeness came to be. I wasn't yearning for it. I wasn't taught about it. I just recognized that this is the byproduct, the work that you put in through the phase 2 experience. This is what then comes to be. So in my experience now, I'm not concerned with the psychic, with the multidimensional. That which takes up my interest, my recognition, is God itself, the whole beingness of God, of one, of whatever all of these names and concepts and things. It's just a wholeness, it's just a singularity of experience. Going back into the psychic partial experience from here doesn't make sense for me. I cannot fit into it. Cannot fit backwards into that. I have awareness of it enough to communicate about it, which I think will be helpful for people, but I don't participate in that. I cannot. It's dissolved for as far as I can see, so much, nearly completely. Sometimes I'll recognize some elements of the demonic, just fleeting, and it just gives me a little reminder, or of the angelic, but I don't interpret things in that way either, So that sort of partiality and that dualism, that dualistic experience, just resolves and dissolves and becomes more into a singularity of soul, of God, consciousness. And that's how I speak about in this group. Part of the dynamic of the group purpose is the sustained realization of consciousness, is to get into become as the experience of consciousness, of soul, of wholeness, itself, so that it is sustained. You recognize it, you realize it, and you live as the experience of that. So that is not something that we can make happen per se. It is the byproduct of the work that we put in, the phase 2 work that we put in. It is the byproduct of it. So we'll have glimpses. We're able to go into that oneness singularity in our meditations. Sometimes we'll recognize it, and we have that oneness singularity, and as well as all the dimensional stuff. But it isn't sustained. The realization of consciousness isn't sustained until you resolve through the phase 2 experience, and then it comes to be on its own. You can't make it happen conceptually. It comes to be on its own. So you don't need to worry about that, So that's why most of the practical encouragement and information communicated here is always about going back down, back into the dark, sleeves up, rolled up, It is there because it is through resolving the shadow that the rest of the light, of the wholeness, the resolution, of the soulfulness, of God realization comes as a byproduct of it. So there's no use facing the other way, trying to grab on to a byproduct, the mirages of a byproduct. The mirages of the light and things. You're trying to grab the mirages of the light that will just slip through your hands. You need to just turn back, go down deep into the dark and resolve it and trust you'll be fine. Just resolve the dark. Any more dark? Get your vacuum cleaner down there, etheric vacuum cleaner. Or blowtorch, I would say. Burn through all of the experience of fear, anxiety, and all of the stuff that needs to be faced and resolved and burned through, And then what happens? The diamond forms, as a result of that. The term that I'm trying to think of. Is forged. The diamond is forged through the challenge and the pressure, of the stones doing whatever they do, So that was the point of the video and a context that I wanted to communicate, with regards to the experience of this life in these realms that we exist and participate, So when you see someone is really attached to the psychic and all of the phenomena and things like that, well, you will recognize, where they are at, and that's all right. Everyone is just doing what they have to do, what is occurring, what is happening. Okay, so that may be interesting for you. And if you've got any questions that you would like to ask about any of the experience of what I've just communicated, feel free to do so. Share your own experiences also, as you wish, as you like. Okay, good day. Thank you.